Welcome to Belgrade Online. We're glad you decided to join us today. I'm Jill, and I'll be your host today. Here at Belgrade, we hope to encourage you in your journey and explore what that means in new and beautiful ways. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode. Up next, announcements. Then we will see who's having birthdays and anniversaries this week. After that, we will hear from the pastor, the scriptures, and let the Spirit move you with some music before I come back to see you off. Welcome to Belgrade Online. The outreach team is completing their final preparations for their August mission trip to Mission, South Dakota. We have a group of 10 people departing on August 7th. We are gathering donations of the following items to bring with us to give to the Tree of Life Ministry, which serves the Lakota people. We ask you to prayerfully consider this opportunity to give. We need shoes that are gently used or new, children's and adults, diapers, any size for infants and toddlers, children's underwear, new, any size, and paperback books for men who are incarcerated. If you would like to purchase gift cards to Amazon, Walmart, or Sam's Club to be donated to Tree of Life, please see Susan and Robin on Sunday morning or call Susan at 507-766-5269. Donations can be left in the lobby on Sunday mornings between July 3rd and July 31st, or can be delivered to the church office weekdays between 9 and 11. Please call ahead to make sure someone is there to let you in. We would like to thank you for being so generous to us for this mission trip and for Belgrade Church.
We've got the next I think it's a week from today already, the missions trip we're leaving. Time is elusive to me lately. This summer is kind of a time warp. Every day kind of runs together. But the outreach team and the missions team, we're going to be heading out a week from today, as you heard on the video, and really excited about that. And I know that there's so many of you praying for us and kind of excited to send us off and when we come back, hear kind of what's going on in the part of the world we're going to. And so for those of you that have been praying and keeping us in your thoughts and prayers and supporting us and donating us and in your however that looks, whether it's in donating items or donating money or donating prayers or donating time or thoughts or concern or care or whatever it is, just want to say thank you so much for that generosity. And that really makes all the difference and is making a huge difference in the world and in our church. And so thank you so much for lending your generosity for that.
This week's birthdays and anniversaries. On the 31st, happy birthday,
Wally Gates.
On the 3rd, happy birthday,
Dana Leesman.
On the 3rd, happy birthday,
Kelsey O'Donnell.
On the 4th, happy birthday,
Brittany Bowman.
On the 31st, happy anniversary,
Kyle and Megan Weiss.
On the 3rd, happy anniversary,
Dave and Carolyn Klaus.
On the 4th, happy anniversary,
Jim and Shelley Dungan.
On the 5th, happy anniversary,
Doug and Deborah Steering.
Have a great week.
Hey, good morning, y'all. Hope everyone's having a fantastic weekend so far. Pastor Dan here, coming at you this morning, continuing our series called Random Summer Thoughts with Pastor Dan. Each week, I'm taking you back to a thought I've had the week before that maybe I feel like God's been bringing in my mind and my heart, and I've been mulling over and chewing on a little bit and repackaging it and giving it to y'all in a way that's hopefully meaningful. And so this week we're continuing on, and we're talking about a subject that something that we all encounter every single day, all day, without exception, every single day. And that is, today our random thought is about people. Talking about people. Like, well, that's a pretty wide topic. What specifically are you talking about in regards to people? I'm glad you asked. Stay tuned and you'll find out. So as we get going this morning, we're going to talk about people, and I pray and hope that this is meaningful and, as always, helpful to you. So keep watching, enjoy, and hope you have a fantastic, fantastic week. See you soon. Grace and peace. This morning, we're going to talk about something, and as we get into it, I am an introvert, and I know that's hard for a lot of people to believe. People are like, "You're not an introvert. You're way too energetic to be an introvert. You're an extrovert." I said, No, I'm an introvert. I'm not an extrovert. I just play one on TV, so to speak, is what I always tell people. But so I'm an introvert, and my oldest daughter, Olivia, she's 12. She is an introvert as well, and so we always kind of joke, because my wife is a raging extrovert, and our middle daughter's a raging extrovert, and so we always kind of joke that Livy and I say, all right, we're kind of done peopling right now. We need to go unpeople. And so there's a little TikTok video online of it's a little bathtub, and it's only a few seconds long, but it shows like the bathtub from the bottom up, and all of a sudden you see this duck peek its eyes up, and then it goes back down again, and then you hear like this little kid's voice go, "Oh no!" And then somebody goes, "What?" And the duck pops his head up and goes, "People," and then hides. And so my daughter and I always watch that and joke about that. Whenever we get tired, we look at each other and go, "Uh-oh," and then the other one will go, "People." And so this morning we're going to talk about people. We're going to talk about people this morning. Very broad topic, I know, but we'll get into it specifics here as we go on. And my daughter and I joke about being introverts and not wanting to be around people and not liking people, but it's just really a joke. We don't really dislike people. We don't really dislike being around people. We love being around people. And it's a misnomer that introverts don't like being around people or don't like people. We love people. It just means that we need a lot of time to recover and recharge our batteries after being around people for an extended amount of time. That's all it means. Introvert doesn't the actual definition of introvert doesn't mean you're quiet or shy, or it just means that it's how you recharge. Do you recharge your battery by being around people, or do you recharge your battery by going off by yourself or with a small tight-knit group of people? So that's really what defines an introvert and an extrovert, is how you recharge. And so some folks, however, don't really like being around people. As introverts, we love being around people. We just need to recharge afterwards. But some folks really don't like being around people. They don't like being around others. And I'm sure there's exceptions, but usually those that don't like people or don't like being around people, they aren't really happy or cheerful inside. And in my experience, people might say they don't like to be around others, and they might actually feel like that, but deep down, maybe without realizing it, there are real reasons, actual reasons why people might not feel like they enjoy being around people. And so a couple reasons for that as we get into this is, along the line, people may have experienced some string of discouragements or felt hurt or maybe embarrassed by someone or other people or made fun of by people or bullied by others or something like that. Or maybe they don't feel like they fit in and they haven't felt like that over a long period of time, and so they don't feel adequate or good enough to be around others, or maybe they worked a job where the task was to help people or customers, who in turn yelled at them or chewed them out or called them names by the same people that they were there to help, And for those of you that have ever worked in retail or restaurant jobs or customer service, or a bank, you all know exactly what I'm talking about. You're there to help people, but the people will destroy you. You are the enemy, even though you're supposed to be helping them. And so you'll hear, I always laugh about this. Like, people will always accuse the younger generations of being entitled. If you've ever worked in retail or food service, on a Sunday after church, you'll see entitlement in all ages. It's there. In all of us. But the point is that, if you've worked in those jobs or whatever, you might hear people say the phrase, "I've lost my faith in humanity," And again, most of the time it's a joke. It's kind of just joking about it. But sometimes deep down inside it's kind of true. Sometimes over time we feel like we don't like being around folks because we consistently have witnessed some of the most, despicable behavior by other people. Some selfish behavior, especially by those who should be adults or should know better or should be maybe even Christians, And so, and without a show of hands, I would ask you rhetorically, how many of you have ever felt like that? How many of you have ever felt like you just don't want to be around people? You don't like people, maybe not forever. Maybe it was just a season. Maybe it was just a couple minutes. Maybe it was just one experience you had. But how many of us have ever felt like, I've just lost my faith in humanity. I'm done with people. No more peopling. Oh no, people. But here's the thing. We've all felt like this. But God hasn't designed us to be islands and actually get away from people for the long haul. God designed us to enjoy life with others. Without family or friends or the company of others, we deny what it means, one of the things of what it means to be human. And so God designed us to be people who need people. And my mother-in-law always has this phrase. She's always said, for as long as I've known her, she would always jokes, whenever she says goodbye or hello or something, she'd go, "Hello, people who need people," or, "Goodbye, people who need people." It's kind of a funny thing that she says, but I've always kind of liked that. She always says people who need people, because that's really all of us. We all need each other. We all need people. And so this week I've been thinking about people, just people in general. So today we're going to talk about people. We're going to talk about people this week. And we're going to talk a bit about that and kind of why God hardwired us to need people, to need each other people. And so to do that, we're going to be looking at the life of King Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes. So the scripture this morning we're going to talk about people. So we're going to read this. It's from Ecclesiastes chapter 4, and it's 7 verses 7 through 14. So we'll go ahead and read that this morning. So Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 7 says this: "Again I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil. Yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. 'For whom am I toiling?' he asked. 'And why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless. It's a miserable business. Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help him up. Also, if two lie down together, they'll keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. And a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Better a poor but wise youth than an old but foolish king who no longer knows how to heed a warning. The youth may have come from prison to the kingship, or may have been born in poverty within his kingdom." This is the word of God for the people of God. And we all said, thanks be to God. So, this is this scripture. It's a simple message, but there's a lot of nuance in that simple message, and you probably picked it up by reading it. But just to give you a little background of this scripture passage, this is believed to be written by King Solomon in the Old Testament. Now, King Solomon was King David's son. King David was like the catalyst of the golden years of ancient Israel. And then there was his son, King Solomon. King David was beloved, and King Solomon, when it was time for Solomon to reign, when King David passed away, there's a story about, God coming to him and asking him to request anything that he wants for his kingship, and Solomon asks for wisdom. And God says, you could have asked for anything. You could have asked for riches or fame or wealth or whatever it is, but you asked for wisdom. And so God said, I'm going to give you wisdom and all this other stuff because you desired wisdom. Well, as his kingship went on, long story short, King Solomon sort of it's viewed that he kind of dehumanized himself and ended up sort of dying this miserable, lonely person at the end of his life. And at the end of his life, scholars believe that he wrote this book, Ecclesiastes, and it's sort of a cynical yet truthful look of humanity from a man who is apparently one of the wisest people to ever live. And so, if you read the book of Ecclesiastes, there's a lot of places it's kind of a head scratcher, because over and over you hear this phrase, depending on what translation you use, vanity, all is vanity, or in essence, meaningless. Everything's meaningless. There's no point to life. And there is a point to it at the end of the book, or throughout the book. There's clues and things, but as a whole, the book can get kind of depressing if you don't really get what's being talked about. And so, this scripture kind of comes at a point where the mood is sort of turning in the book, and so he's talking about people, right? So he goes into this, and the first verse in verse 7, he says, "I saw another thing that's meaningless under the sun." So he's kind of listing things that are vanity or meaningless throughout this scripture, and so throughout this book, through the scriptures, and so he says, here's another thing that's meaningless. And then in verse 8, he talks about this person who's all alone. And the descriptions he uses, this man is all alone and has no son nor brother. And that's just an ancient Near Eastern way of saying this person didn't have anybody. This person didn't have family or friends. There was no people that this person surrounded themselves with. And then he kind of goes into clarifying why this is meaningless or vanity. And in verse 8, basically says this person was all alone. This person was all alone. And then he goes on and says there's no end, as a result, there's no end to this person's toil or this person's work. And then he goes on and says this person asks himself, why am I even doing this? Why am I even toiling and doing all this work? Why am I depriving myself of any enjoyment in life? And then goes on and talks about the benefits of having people in our lives. And so I just kind of want to go through this quickly verse by verse to kind of explain it, and then we'll say a couple words and we'll close. And so he says this person all alone doesn't have anybody around him. And in verse 8 it says they went about it all alone. No people. Just an island unto themselves. Many people think that he's talking about himself here in kind of a different tense. But he says there's nobody around this person. They wanted to go at it all alone. They're just by themselves, nobody around them. They can do this. They've got this. People are irritating and more of a hassle, and it's just easier to just do things yourself, right? And then sort of the second part of verse 8 there, it says there's no end to their toil. Because if you don't surround yourself with others, you have nothing left to do than be a workaholic. Just bury yourself and give yourself to your work. You've got no friends, you got no family, you got no common people to hang around with or anything. You bury yourself in your work. There's no end to this person's toil. Basically just becomes slave to their own machine. And the third final part of verse 8 there, it says he basically kind of comes to himself. And this kind of is sharing the journey of his thought. So he's all alone, gives himself over to his work, and then at the end of the verse 8, it kind of comes to himself and basically saying, why am I doing this? For who am I toiling? This is all meaningless. Why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? And so he's going on and realizing that he's all alone. He's living to work, and it's pointless. The point of even working isn't just to make money and have riches. It's somehow to create meaningful connection, to offer something to the world for people, and to be around people and doing it and things. And so then goes on, starting in verse 9, and talks about why he's found his life to be meaningless and the benefits. He says in verse 9, in the first part of verse 9, he says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. So it says basically more people accomplishes more. More than one will accomplish more. Being around people, you can accomplish more. So being around people helps us to accomplish more. It says you're by yourself, you can get stuff done. But when you're around others, you accomplish way more than you could if you were by yourself. Now, it doesn't always feel like that, because when we get involved in something, we think it's easier to just go about it on our own. And it might be easier. It might be more, on the flip side, it might be more complicated to involve someone else in what we're doing. It might take longer. But in the long run, you'll actually accomplish more with someone else than if you're just by yourself, even though it's easier by yourself. More people complicates things, but you accomplish more. And it teaches you something about who you are, because it's no longer yourself working for yourself. There's more work because it's a relational work. You get to know yourself, you get to know others. And so having other people around actually helps you accomplish more, but as less of a machine. I think last week or the week before, I forget, we talked about productivity and toxic productivity. And so this is one way to help combat toxic productivity, is work with people, work around people, be around people more. Because you'll get more done, and you'll do it in a way that's less machine-like and more human. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. So he says, 2 gets you more return on your labor. You can accomplish more. And the second thing in verse 10 says, if either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and doesn't have anybody to help him up. So in essence, the first thing, with people you can accomplish more. The second thing, when you have more people around you, when you fall into, this says, if you falls down or fall into a pit or something, in kind of ancient terms. But to say it in modern terms, if you're going through something, if you feel like you're falling, if you feel like you're about to give up, if you got people around you that care about you, they're going to reach down and help you get up. And sometimes all that takes is a, hey, how you doing? This past week, being a pastor in COVID is really weird. It's very difficult, and it's this COVID is the pandemic has really, really destroyed a lot of things that are fundamental to thriving as a human. When it first started, I was seeing a doctor, and he said, I asked him, I said, so are you seeing a lot of people, coming in for depression and things like that? He goes, oh yeah. He says it's probably, I think he said probably like, usually he sees maybe 40% of his patients are there for depression or something. And this was only in like month 3 or 4 of the pandemic. He said probably now around 70% of all my patients are here for depression. And I was thinking about that and how difficult it's been for so many people because of an illness, because of a disease that wants to take us out. It ends up taking us, trying to avoid the physical illness has brought upon a mental illness for so many people, or maybe just revealed what was already there. I don't know. But either way, forcing us to be apart from each other can be difficult. And sometimes all it takes is a, hey, how you doing from someone to lift you out of that. So pastoring in a pandemic is difficult, and a lot of times you have ups and downs, and I was having a particularly rough time a day or two this week, and I was driving home from the grocery store one day, and my phone starts to ring, and I saw who it was. It was another pastor friend of mine who I really appreciate, but I just didn't feel like picking up because I was just kind of going through something internally. Nothing externally, just internally like you do sometimes. And for whatever reason, I felt this kind of pull, just answer the phone, Dan, just answer the phone. Introverts, we don't like answering phones. And so we'd rather return the phone call. That way, I think everybody should practice that, by the way, because then you take control of your time. And the phone doesn't determine your time, you do, But anyway, different story. So anyway, right before I went to voicemail, I picked it up and I answered. And it was like, within 10 seconds, what I was going through completely lifted. And I ended up talking to this guy for an hour, and we ended up, he had no idea what I was going through internally. I didn't tell him what I was going through internally. But by the time I hung up, I felt so encouraged and so energized just because he called and just to say, how you doing? And somehow he told me, man, I'm glad I called you. I'm glad you picked up. Gosh, I feel so good to hear your voice. I feel so much better after talking to you. And he wasn't really going through anything that I knew of. And I was thinking about that for the days after. I'm like, just somebody asking you how you're doing for no reason at all, no strings attached. You can't do anything for them. They can't really do anything for you. It's just someone being there can lift you up when you feel like you're falling down. So Solomon says here, if anybody falls down, somebody can help them up. So it's easy to just give encouragement and to get encouraged just by somebody saying, how are you doing? Sometimes it takes more than that. Sometimes that's all it takes. But people can end up being an encouragement to us. Next thing in verse 11 says, also, if two lie down together, they'll keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Now, this is ancient Near Eastern talk. Hot days, freezing nights in that part of the world a lot of times. And so it was customary for, home arrangements and there's no beds really like we know them. There were straws. And a lot of times families slept in the same room, in the same vicinity. There wasn't like separate bedrooms or anything. The whole family would sleep in the same area because you wanted to keep warm at night. And you share body warmth by being in close proximity. So this isn't like a marriage thing, quote unquote. This is wink wink. This is just a human thing. People did this. Families slept in close proximity to keep each other warm a lot of times. And so basically he's saying, not only can you accomplish more with other people, not only can people be an extreme encouragement to you, but you can share resources to help each other along. Even literally the heat from your own body in those days they used to help each other. Other people can literally keep them warm at night. You can share resources. This is kind of the weird thing about the West is we're so compartmentalized and we're so fixed on individualism. This is me over here, my house, my family, my stuff, my space bubble, where everything revolves around us and keeping our compartments and drawing strong dividers between us and others. But in the ancient Near East and in the ancient Judaism, where our faith comes out of, because our faith is an Eastern religion, it wasn't that way. And matter of fact, one of the key teachings of Jesus and one of the key characteristics of the church in the book of Acts is this idea of sharing. Now, the minute you talk about stuff, sharing resources and things, the minute you talk about that, some people will like all of a sudden pop up the communism word. Not talking about that. I'm not talking about anything political. I'm talking about people sharing resources together for each other's benefit. I'm talking about people being there for each other. You need a ride to work. I got a car. No, it's my car. No, my faith says that my resources should be used for others, not just my selfish purposes. Yeah, but you bought it and you paid the... If we're people of faith, the scriptures talk about nothing we own is ours. Generosity is a major characteristic of what it means to follow Christ. Sharing, that's one of the first things we teach kids. But then all of a sudden when we become an adult, we flip it. There's no sharing here. It's my stuff, I bought this. This is mine. Mine. The one word we try to eradicate from toddlers. We might not say it, but we embody the attitude. Mine, But with other people, you share resources. You help each other out. You become your sibling's keeper, your sister's keeper, your brother's keeper. You become together. You become a people. And so, two lie down, you can share warmth, you share resources together. That's verse 11. So next in verse 12, not only can you accomplish more with people, can you gain encouragement from people, not only can you benefit each other's lives by sharing resources with people, but in verse 12, it says, though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves, and a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. In essence, there's a deeper sense of safety together. With other people, there's a higher probability of protection and being safe. Kind of as the old term goes, there's safety in numbers. This is true when you have a bunch of people that are there for the care and the love and the benefit of each other. There's safety in numbers. There's safety with others. You can keep each other safe. It's rare that danger, what this person is saying from their, from their perspective, if there's a big group of people, a bear is much less likely to attack a big group of people than just one person walking by themselves, One bandit isn't going to attack a group of 2, 3, 4 people. So there's safety with each other. There's protection with each other. And then in verse 13, so these are kind of the final 2 verses in the passage, and it's kind of the 2 verses, they say the same thing but in different ways. And so it says, I'll explain it a little bit. Better a poor but wise youth than an old but foolish king who no longer knows how to heed a warning. The youth may have come from prison to the kingship, or he may have been born in poverty within his kingdom. Now, these verses at face value don't seem to coincide with the rest of them, but they do, and here's how. Because King Solomon is talking about, most people, scholars believe he's talking about himself here, a life that's lived on your own is futile and meaningless. But when you live with others, it may be more difficult at times. It may be more difficult at a lot of times. It may open yourselves up to a lot of hurt and a lot of pain, because that's what relationships are. It's vulnerability. And when you engage in relationships, friendships, co-workers, whatever it is, spouses, any kind of relationships, when you engage in any sort of partnership with other people, if it's going to be successful, there's one quality you've got to have. And it says, better a poor but wise youth than an old but foolish king who no longer knows how to heed a warning. Now, if you take that and repackage it as it says it in the original language, basically it's saying people that benefit from solid relationships are people that are committed to growth. Because if I'm around somebody else who I've earned the right to speak into their life, and they've earned the right to speak into mine, there's going to be a level of comfort between those two people where they can tell the other one the truth. In essence, if I'm in a friendship and we've earned the right to speak into each other's lives over a long period of time through different circumstances and situations, and one friend looks at my life and says, you're on a wrong path there. This here and this here is going to lead to this. I'm telling you this because I love you and I don't want you to be there. I want to help you, blah, 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 Heed a warning. Friends, close people know how to give that solid warning isn't a good word. There's a better, a critique, but a loving, constructive criticism or something like that. You can talk truthfully to one another. And the other person might get their back up and get angry, but you're friends. You've been through it before. You know how to deal with it. They'll come around. We'll come around. Yes, this hurts, but and you come around, you apologize, and you're right. But there's that level of comfort of telling truth to each other that the other one might not want to hear, but doing it in a loving way. There's, in essence, teachability. When you're in solid relationship with people, you develop, in order for that to really benefit, you develop this quality called teachability. And you learn how to be teachable. And you learn how to say, you're right. Even if you don't feel like saying, yeah, you're right, and you know they're right, but you don't feel like it. But you're teachable. And you grow together. And so he's making a contrast. This has nothing to do with young versus old. It's just a way, it's a figure of speech of basically saying, better somebody with no knowledge of a position or how to do something, but they're teachable. Better that person than somebody who's seasoned and knows what they're talking about, but is not teachable. No humility, no sense of growth about them. Companies and businesses know this. Successful businesses that know how to hire well and know how to interview well, they'll take an inexperienced, extremely green around the ears, around the collar type person who's teachable than someone who's just a rock star, who's really good at what they do, is so talented, so skilled, so knowledgeable, so seasoned, but is closed off to any sort of input. A good hiring person will say, I'd rather train that person than try to deal with that person, because that person might be good at what they do, but we will have a conflict at some point, because there's always conflict. And you want to hire the person who knows how to handle the conflict responsibly and maturely. 9 out of 10 times, it's going to be the most inexperienced one who's teachable. And so that's what this is saying. Other people teach us to be teachable. Because teachability is growth. It's transformation. And that's really what it means to be a person of faith. It's following Jesus, learning how to be humble, learning how to be teachable, learning how to grow, to admit when we're wrong, to listen to someone else when they're speaking truthfully yet lovingly. There's a difference between, speaking truthfully to someone but dismissing them and getting all angry and huffy and puffy at them. There's a difference between that and telling truth to somebody out of care and concern, because you can hear it in their voice. We know the difference when someone's telling us something out of care versus when someone's just telling us something because they're huffy and puffy, So, basically he's saying this: doesn't matter where you've come from. It doesn't matter what your experience are. It doesn't matter what you've done, because he says this, better someone who's come from prison to a kingship, because they've learned how to be teachable. Because if you've been at one point of life, but now you've attained another point of life, you're teachable. You know how to grow. You don't have your heels dug in. You have your heart wide open. And that growth will propel you forward. Better that kind of a person. So it doesn't matter where you've come from as long as you're teachable. And teachability means you're receptive to other people. Your heart's open. And better, it says, though he may have been born in poverty within his kingdom. So he may have, whatever he's done from prison, but now has learned to grow and got into this position of a king. It doesn't matter what you've done as long as you're teachable, as long as you're open to other people. In that sense, you may have been born in poverty within the kingdom that he now kings, that he now rules. So it doesn't matter what you've done, it doesn't matter where you've come from. As long as your heart is open to listen to others, to let other people in, to allow other people to prove themselves to you, to allow others to do the work to earn your trust and respect, and for you to do the work to earn others' trust and respect. As long as your heart is open, it doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter what you've done, it doesn't matter if you fall down, it doesn't matter if you run out of resources, it doesn't matter if you feel like you're productive on your own. doing things with other people is always more beneficial. You can accomplish more. You can get more done. You can be way more encouraged. You can have more resources. You're way more safe and protected. And you're teachable. That's what people do, because what matters is growth and transformation, learning and being teachable, able to be encouraged. That's what people bring to our lives. And the more isolated we are, the more comfortable we become in our present state. We become comfortable where we're at. We don't have to change. We don't have to grow. We're just comfortable here, me and myself, and what I've built, and the walls and the fortress I've built around myself. I'm comfortable. I don't need anybody else. I'm a self-made person. Self-made people are the most miserable people. That's a Western fallacy, self-made person. Do it on my own. My own bootstraps, my own responsibility. Anybody who's successful, truly successful in life, can look back on their life and see a community of people that have helped them get to where they're at. Parents, teachers, co-workers, friends, support systems. Nobody does anything on their own. It's a lie from the Western, from the Western American dream, The values that were instilled because of a solid family you had. A lot of people don't have that. So we have our present state, the people who we are, is a result of people. And if we become so comfortable within our own little bubble, thinking we've created this own little fortress around ourselves so that we can just be how we want to be, we just become complacent. Not growing. We don't need to grow. We don't need to transform. We stop doing the hard work of reflecting on ourselves and learning, and growing and changing, not in a shameful way, but in an empowered way. So, and I'm talking about the way just being around others gives us a spark to try something new or get into something that we wouldn't have otherwise enjoyed. I always tell the story, when I was in 7th grade, I loved the water. I loved swimming and stuff since I was really little, but only to a point. I was a pretty shy kid, and I was afraid of kind of sort of stepping out and trying new things when I was really little. And one summer, every summer we'd go up north, and my mom is one of like 13 kids, so all of my aunts and uncles and many of my cousins, we'd all rent out one resort for 1 week during the beginning of July, and we'd do that every summer growing up. And one summer, I was I think I was going into 7th grade. We went up there, and my uncle said, "Oh, we're going to take the boat out tonight." I'm like, "Cool, yay, go on a boat ride." And I said, "We're going to go tubing behind the boat." And I said, "What's tubing?" And he told me, "Well, it was a big inner tube that we pull behind the boat, and you have fun and try to hold on." And I was like, okay, and I was a little nervous about that. But my cousin Mitchell, who's a year or two younger than me, he says, "No, I'll come with you. It's a tube that has like 2 inner tubes in one, so we can go together." I'm like, "All right, okay." I wouldn't have done it on my own, but he got me to go with him. And so we're laying on our stomachs, holding on to the handles on the tube, and my uncle slowly gets us up above the water, and we're going. And, the first thing that happens is I'm leaning forward, holding, with nervously tensed arms, leaning forward. Well, if you lean forward on a tube, when a boat starts going slowly, you go underwater, And so I'm like, and so then he stops the boat, and I'm like, you slowly come up, and I'm like, I looked at my cousin, he's like, "You got to lean back." And I'm like, "All right." So I lean back, and he starts getting up and going and zipping us all around the lake. And, when you turn a boat, you're usually within the wake, but when you turn a boat, you go out of the wake, and that's when stuff really starts to get real. And, he went a little too fast. This is my first time on the tube. He went a little too fast, and the tube turned over. But I didn't know you're supposed to let go, because I didn't want to be in the middle of the lake with just, me by myself, my life jacket bobbing up and down. So I'm like, you know, I'd been playing guitar for a few years, and I've always had big, strong hands, and so I'm like holding on, got a death grip on these things, and I'm upside down on my back across the water, and so I'm like trying to like go stop, give the hand signal for stop, you know, and so he stops the boat, and like I'm holding on to the tube, and I was kind of, I remember saying, "Reel me in," and we get back in the boat, and my cousin and I just start laughing. Now, if I had been by myself, I would have been traumatized by that experience. But just the sheer fact that my cousin was with me and we had both experienced that ridiculous scenario together, it became one of my most cherished memories from my childhood. And I couldn't wait to try tubing again the next day. And by the end of the week, I was a maniac, you know, jumping up and down on it, whatever. But so the point is that being with another person, it caused me to do something I wouldn't normally do. It caused me to like doing something I wouldn't have normally liked. To try something I would have normally been afraid to do, simply because there was another person right there. And so people can help turn a bad experience into a fun memory. They can help encourage you, like my friend encouraged me, and help you, a friend can also help you discern your calling. I mean, you can sit down with somebody and you can talk your story out with them, and they'll listen to you, and your story is your story. You've lived through it. We don't necessarily notice all the patterns. It can be tough. But somebody that's just hearing your story shotgunned in an hour or something, it's easy for them to say, well, I see a pattern there and there, and you really light up when you talk about that. You're really good at that. You say, it seems like this is pretty evident where you should go. And somebody else just hearing your story and just telling you what you just said can make a light bulb go off. That's what happened to me in seminary. And so just being with a group of other people and them saying, oh, Dan, this is what you're called to do. It's very evident. And it took them saying that, going, I never thought about that. I guess so. Others can really help discern your calling. But it's others. And I love how others can even give us confidence. And I'll close with this story. So many of you know my son Charlie. My son Charlie just turned 6 years old. And Charlie's a lot like me when I was a little boy, when I was real little. He's got a huge imagination. If an idea pops in his head that he wants to follow, the world around him will shut down, and he puts all his energy towards that thing, no matter how ridiculous it is. But he's also quite shy when talking to other people, and he gets really discouraged really easy. And so with that, Charlie loves to swim as well, like I did, but he hates putting his head underwater. He's got these little floaties that you slip them into your arms, and it goes around your chest, and it clips around your back. And so he's worn these since he was old enough to be in the water without us holding him, but he's just turned 6, and he's a beefy 6-year-old, and he's well outgrown these floaties. And he wants to keep wearing them, but we said, no, buddy, you've outgrown them. Plus, it's time to start learning how to swim. No, I don't want to learn how to swim. I want my floaties. No, buddy, it's time to be done with your floaties. And thank goodness he outgrew them, so we can't put them on anymore. It's like cutting off the circulation. They're okay, Dad. I like my floaties, It's funny how we accept a shackle on ourselves because we're too afraid to take a next step in life sometimes. But that's another sermon. Anyhow, so he's outgrown him. And this year we were able to afford to get the kids swimming lessons. And so we had them scheduled. And before they started, I used to teach swimming lessons up in the cities at a couple different Lifetime Fitness locations. And so I still had my curriculum. And so I was looking. And so I started trying to work with him whenever we'd go to the pool before the swimming lessons started this season. And so tried to get him to, go in the shallow end and do some bobs, get his head underwater, or, turn him on his back and put his head on my shoulder and get him to float. But he would not do it. And in all fairness, no kid wants to be taught by their parents anyway, so I get that. But I tried to kind of, get him primed for swimming lessons. But he didn't want to do it. And he said he didn't want to do swimming lessons, and he was really afraid about going his head underwater and going on his back and things. And so this is going to be, I remember thinking this is going to be interesting to see how this works. So we took him to swimming lessons, and so I was a bit nervous, and this was at MSU a couple months ago, and so the parents go up and watch in the bleachers and look down, so we're kind of not by the kids during the swimming lessons, and so there's Charlie goes into swimming lessons, and there's three kids in his group, and one of the kids is one of his best friends. So he's all excited that day when he got there and found out that one of his best friends was in his swimming lessons group. And so I watched this lesson from the bleachers, and within the first lesson, by the end, he was doing his back float with no resistance. And then the next week, he progressed even more. And when it was time to go in and do some head bobs, he just went in. There's a little platform they put in the water, so if it's in deep, the kids are actually in shallow water, and the teacher's there. So when it was time to get in, the teacher said, all right, come right here and let's do some bobs. And they hold on to the side of the pool, and he just went right in and put his head underwater. One swimming lesson. He was doing that. The next week, he progressed even more. And by the third week, 3 weeks, one swimming lesson a week. So he hadn't even been taking an hour and a half of swim lessons yet. By the third week, he was able to swim off the platform probably about 3 yards one way and another way without touching the bottom, without a floaty, all by himself, do a little doggy paddle within 3 weeks. And he just kept getting better and better and better and having a blast at the same time. And as of last Thursday, he progressed 2 whole swimming lessons, 2 whole swimming levels this summer. And here's the deal. The swimming teachers used the same methods and the same tricks that Lifetime Fitness used, that I used when I worked with Lifetime Fitness teaching kids. There wasn't really any difference at all. A couple terms weren't the same, but they did kind of the similar curriculum. The only difference was that he was around his friends. He was around other people. That's the only difference. And since then, his confidence has skyrocketed. Like he's not as shy. He's talking to other people. And he won't shut up. Oh, that's great, Charlie. 2 months ago, we'll be like, oh, he's talking to me. Now it's like, oh, kid, I love you, but shut up, No, I love it. I love it. It's wonderful. And so he's not so shy, and he talks to people, and, he talks to strangers. We encourage that kind of friendliness, and he doesn't get discouraged easily, and he's developed this sort of level of resilience that he didn't have 8 weeks ago. And it's all because of this growth, because he was around other people. Because it's people that help us grow. And it's people that are the channel of God's grace to us. It's people that make up the church. And it's people that communicate God's love in our world. It's all about people. No matter if you're an introvert, no matter if you feel hurt inside, no matter what you've been through or where you've been, it's people. It's all about people. People is how God communicates his love and his grace to us in our world, in our life. It's all about people. And that's my random thought this week.
everyone, it's me, Jill. I'm back to see you off. We hope you have enjoyed your time with us today and that it was meaningful and life-giving. If you want to stay on top of things at Belgrade and know when we will be back, make sure to click the like button on Facebook or YouTube. And subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to hit the bell icon to get alerted when the next episode of Belgrade Online is available. Until next time, I'm Jill. Thank you for watching and have a great week.